My name is Amanda Paul. I am 20 years old. I am originally from Dallas, Texas, but I'm currently a junior at Baylor University, so currently living in Waco. I am majoring in public relations and really excited about that. I'm involved in a handful of things. I do Young Life, which is a Christian organization. So I lead a group of high school girls who are so awesome. And I'm also very active in my sorority, which is Tri-Delt, and I love it there as well. It was the very end, kind of the spring of my junior year of high school. I was super itchy. It started just like super mild, didn't really think much of it. I was skiing with my family for spring break, and pretty much every day of that entire trip, I would come back to like the condo we were staying in. I would take my ski boots off, and then I would sit there and I would scratch my feet for like probably 10 minutes. I really had no idea why. I figured my boots were too tight, and when I took the boots off, it was like a circulation thing. That's what I had in my head. But it was enough to where I noticed it. And that was the first thing I kind of picked up on. And then coming back from that trip, pretty much every day, the itch got worse. I was kind of scratching until I would get like bruises on my arms and legs. And that was really when we thought something was kind of wrong. And so I first went to my dermatologist because, I'm itchy. It was like probably a skin thing. And so we go to my dermatologist, and she is kind of under the impression that it's something internal because there was no rash. There was nothing externally that she could look at. Like my skin was just itchy. And so she sent me to my pediatrician who did some blood tests. They kind of looked at the state of my legs at the time, which were covered in bruises from my nails. And but the pediatrician thought it looked like lines from scabies, which is skin lice. So the first diagnosis I got was that. And so went home, did the entire treatment for that, which is awful. I really don't recommend. It's like covering yourself in like medicated Vaseline head to toe, sleeping in it, washing it off the next day, and doing that for probably about, I think it was like a week. I had to do that every single day. That did not work. And so I go back to the dermatologist and my pediatrician, and we get a lot of blood work done. Or like maybe it has something to do with like my liver, because like that can cause itching and all of those things. And so they saw that my red like hemoglobin was low. And so they're like, oh, you're anemic. There's not enough blood in your body, so you're itchy. I was like, okay, perfect. And so we went on iron, and I was taking iron, and nothing was getting better. If anything, it was getting worse. And so far, like this has gone on for like probably a month and a half. This started like mid March, and this was going to like the end of April, where it was only itching. That was my only symptom. And so I go to my dermatologist's like boss, like a bigger, like more well known dermatologist, and I get a skin biopsy to see like maybe there's something within my skin that could cause this. That came back completely clean, and everyone was really just stumped at that point. It's probably the middle of May at this point, and I just get really worse really fast. I developed a fever. I found a swollen lymph node by my hip. I had the worst back pain. I could not stay awake for more than like a couple hours without a nap. Um, and just like overall super fatigued, super pale, tired, covered in bruises. At this point, the itch was so bad that I was tearing open my skin, and causing like open wounds. And it was focused on like my lower leg. So knees down was like where it was the worst. But like head to toe was itchy, but particularly my lower legs was the worst. And so after all of these symptoms just popped up basically overnight, my doctor told me to go to the ER. So I go to the biggest children's hospital in all of Dallas, and go to their ER. I'm probably there for, I think it was like 6 or 7 hours. All they did was do a blood test and look at me. And they told me I was just anemic, nothing was wrong, and maybe I should try lotion for the itching. And like last time I checked, lotion does not help a fever. So that was extremely discouraging because I was just kind of at a loss. And at this point, of course, I was doing my own research. Like, what could possibly be this like weird combination of symptoms? I'm like, back pain, fever, swollen lymph node, insanely itchy. And really, the only thing that made sense was Hodgkin lymphoma. That's the only thing that I could possibly have. So I had already, like, in my mind, been like, I literally have cancer. Like, I know. Like, in my gut, like, I knew. And so I'm kind of just going to, like, these different ERs, different specialists, different doctors, and being like, hey, could I have Hodgkin lymphoma? Like, pulling up WebMD, I'm like, literally, it's like a checklist. And I can put a check mark next to every single symptom. Um, and that was when I found the patient story because I was like, I need like more than just WebMD to like tell me. And so I found a girl on the patient story, and her symptoms and overall story was just fully identical to mine, completely, from like the itching to the fever to the swollen lymph node to the low red counts. I also had really high inflammation markers. That's not really like a super common blood test, but I was tested for actually everything under the sun. And so that's just another like random thing that kind of pointed it out. Um, but I would like pull up that story and show it to doctors, and they would be like, maybe, but probably not. Like, you're young and healthy. Like, no way. Even though I fell in the, like, perfect age range. Like, female girls 15 to 22 is, like, most common to get Hodgkin lymphoma. And yet, like, every single doctor was just fully stumped. And so, finally, after close to 3 months of searching for answers, my dermatologist sent me to her like distant friend who was an infectious disease doctor at Baylor Scott and White in downtown Dallas. So I stopped going to children's hospitals at this point because they were no help. And so I went to this infectious disease doctor. I'm tested for anything and everything by that point. And she's like, the only thing that I can think of, like, to test something else is to get your lymph node biopsied. We scheduled a surgery. After that, I got my lymph node removed and biopsied, and within an hour, they were like, yeah, it's Hodgkin lymphoma. And so I got my PET scan, and cancer was everywhere. It was on both sides of my diaphragm. It had spread outside of my lymph nodes. It was on my liver, my spleen. There was a spot in my shoulder. It was really random. But I did get a bone marrow biopsy from my pelvis that showed that there was not cancer in all of my bone marrow. And so it was like extremely early stage 4. My treatment plan was the AAVD chemo, and the original plan was to do it for 12 rounds over 6 months. So twice a month, every other week, I would go into the hospital, do blood work, and then go into the infusion room, get all of the chemos. There's 4 kinds, and they would just run them one after another. And then once I was done, I would go home. And I did that for 6 months. There were a couple different times where it got delayed, and so it ended up being closer to 7. And after I finished my treatment, my nurse would put what's called a Neulasta on my stomach, which kind of looks like an Omnipod for diabetes patients. But it's like a little pod that's full of the drug, I think, which is called Neulasta, and it's put on and it's programmed to go off 24 hours later. So 24 hours after I finished chemo, I got this other injection that was a GCSF shot, and that is like a bone marrow stimulant. So that upped my counts really fast right after chemo. And so it made me, I was immunocompromised, but not so much that I would have to like stay home and things like that. Like I could still like go to school and stuff. I would be careful, and like if I wasn't feeling well, I would like wear a mask or not leave the house. But those shots helped a lot. But those were honestly sometimes worse than chemo because they just put me in so much pain, which was another like weird thing about being a teenager in the adult hospital because um, the younger you are, the more bone marrow you have. And like as you get older, I think it's like the red marrow or something like that. I don't know. This is why I'm not a STEM major. And so um, it like stimulates that type of marrow to make more blood cells. And with my bones working in overtime, it caused a lot of pain. But that's more common in younger patients than older patients. So a lot of my doctors didn't really know how to handle that because what they tell older patients is like, oh, like take a Claritin because it kind of like lowers the histamine effect, something like that. For some reason, Claritin lowered the bone pain for older patients, and that just did absolutely nothing for me. Um, in each round, it got worse. And so by the end of it, I was on like full blown opioid pain medication for this bone pain, which was like awful. It was so bad. Um, I remember trying to describe it to people because until you feel bone pain, you don't know what bone pain feels like. It's really just a really odd type of pain. I lost my hair, which was hard for sure. When I was starting chemo, I cut it short, almost to like the length it is now, which like to me I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's so long." But then I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so short." So cut my hair, and then I told myself, I was like, I don't want to like shave it before I have to, but I'm going to shave it when it's at the point where it's so thin, I would look better bald than with the 5 hairs I still had on my head. So that was my plan. And that happened about 5 or 6 days after my second round of chemo. I went in and um, my dad is also bald. And so he shaved my head, which was very fun because like I trusted him. It's like he like shaves the little bit of hair he still has like every week, and so he knows his way around a razor. So he shaved my head, but I kind of made it a party. I always saw like videos of people online like crying in the bathroom and like all those things while shaving their head. And like, yes, I was sad. I had my moments, but I didn't want the actual experience to be sad. And so I had a buzz party. I invited all of my friends over. My sister had some of her friends over. My mom's friends are over. My brother's friends are over. Like all of the people. We probably had like 20 to 25 people there to watch me shave my head.
Two, one.
I finished chemo at the end of November of my senior year of high school, and they wanted to wait a few weeks to like let chemo like run its course and all the things before I got my final PET scan. And so at the end of December, 4 days before Christmas, I got my final PET scan, and that showed that I was fully in remission. I remember my oncologist called, and it was like just me, my mom, and my dad around the kitchen table with the phone on speaker. And he told us the news. And I expected myself to be more excited than I was. I was like my parents were like jumping up and down, like full excitement. But I was kind of just like, okay, cool, now what? Kind of in my head. Like now I'm honestly like I'm so grateful I'm in remission and extremely happy, and every time I go for a checkup like and everything is clean, it's like a huge relief. But the first time, like the first like final PET scan, um I was relieved, but not like as excited as I thought I was going to be. After I finished treatment, a really, really close family friend was diagnosed with leukemia, and it was just not like good. The uh, the outlook was just like not good and all of that stuff. And so that was just like definitely a really hard hit because like I knew what that was. And that was kind of like my first feelings of survivor's guilt was through that. He ended up passing away a year and a half later. Yeah, I think it was a year and a half. Um, and so that was definitely like hitting really hard. And like I did make a presence for myself online. And through that, I've met a lot of friends. And a lot of those friends weren't as lucky as me. And a lot of them have passed away or relapsed and are still fighting, and like all of those things, which can be definitely really hard mentally. And that's like probably one of my bigger struggles up until today. Um, and then, like I said, after treatment, just feeling like defenseless against it coming back, and it's just kind of like at its free will whether or not it comes back. Since it was such a late stage, there was a bigger chance that it would come back than me actually staying in remission. Especially the first year, there was, I don't remember the statistic, but I think it was like close to 70 or 80% chance that it would come back within the first year. So like being in that like 20% of being in remission after frontline treatment, of being in such a late stage, um, was definitely like a really weird feeling. Knowing that like so many other people did exactly what I did and it didn't work. And so that was just hard things to think about, I think. And of course, just like for a while, I felt like I was in a constant state of grief. Just like friends passing away, um, seeing friends of friends passing away, and just all of those things from the same disease I fought. And like I lived and I'm doing great and I have my life now, but they don't. And so that was definitely really hard. Of like the survivor's guilt aspect. My freshman year of college, like freshman year of college is hard for anyone, uh, let alone 8 months after finishing chemo and finishing cancer treatment. I had kind of like a raggy mullet haircut surfer boy look going on going into college, and that was like definitely really hard. The transition to college wasn't really easy. I ended up transferring schools for a number of reasons, and was just definitely like grieving a lot of like grieving my old life, grieving friends who have passed, and like all the things. um working through a lot of survivor's guilt, and then also PTSD had come into a play at that point, and just different aspects bringing up different emotions just like really, really randomly. Um, and so those are definitely still struggles today. Um, and like through survivorship of like survivor's guilt, PTSD, depression, anxiety, like all of the things wrapped up super nicely and just handed to me. Finding any piece of autonomy you have over your life, I think, can really change your experience. And even if that's just being able to smile or being able to pick up the phone and call a friend, like if that's the only freedom you have, like use it to benefit your mental health in any way possible. And so if that means like going on a walk, or like I said, like calling a friend or reading a book, but just like finding those things that brighten your day a little bit, finding those and like clinging onto them and knowing that you can do them no matter what kind of state of treatment you're in, I think it's really helpful. And kind of just like keeping your mindset that trying to take control of any aspect that you can, and also knowing that like it's a unique experience. It's not an awesome experience, but it's a unique one.